My fiancé said your groomsmen are ugly. Uninvite them or I will. I replied, problem solved. They're now ushers at our relationship's funeral. What the new invitation said left her speechless. Subscribe to the channel and like the video to see more stories like this. My fiancé said, your groomsmen are ugly. Uninvite them or I will. I replied, problem solved. They're now ushers at our relationship's funeral. What the new invitation said left her speechless. I'm Derek Hansen, 31 years old, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought I was marrying the woman of my dreams. Vanessa Crawford sat across from me at Café Lumière, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her phone screen as she scrolled through our wedding planning app with the intensity of a general reviewing battle plans. The afternoon sunlight caught the 2-carat engagement ring on her finger, the one I'd saved 14 months to afford. We need to talk about your groomsmen, she said without looking up from her phone. Her voice had that particular edge I'd grown to recognize over our 2-year relationship, the tone that meant this wasn't actually a discussion. I set down my coffee. What about them, Derek? She finally looked at me, her blue eyes cold despite the warm lighting. Be honest, can you really look at the photos from the Whitmore wedding last month and tell me your friends would fit the aesthetic? The Whitmore wedding had been Vanessa's obsession for weeks. Her college roommate had married into old money, and the ceremony had been featured in 3 bridal magazines. Vanessa had dissected every detail like a forensic scientist, from the imported orchids to the custom monogrammed napkins that cost more than my monthly car payment. Fit the aesthetic? I repeated slowly. You mean my best friend since high school? I mean Marcus with his receding hairline and that beer gut. I mean Tyler who refuses to get his teeth whitened even though I offered to pay for it. And don't even get me started on Chris. She took a delicate sip of her oatmeal latte. The man has a crooked nose, Derek. A crooked nose. Do you know what that's going to look like in professional photos? I stared at her, waiting for the punchline that never came. This was the same Marcus who'd driven 4 hours through a snowstorm when my father died, who'd sat with me in that hospital waiting room for 12 hours without complaint. Tyler, who'd lent me $3,000 interest-free when my car broke down and I was between paychecks. Chris, who'd talked me off a ledge when I was considering dropping out of community college, who'd believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Those are my brothers, Vanessa. They've been there for me through everything, and I'm sure they're lovely people with great personalities. She said it the way someone might describe a rescue dog with behavioral issues. But this is our wedding day, Derek. Our special day. The photos from this event will be on our walls forever. Our children will see them. Our grandchildren. Is this really what you want them to see? The wedding drama had been building for months, but I'd chalked it up to normal pre-wedding stress. Vanessa worked as a marketing director for a luxury skincare company, and she'd approached our wedding with the same meticulous attention to detail she brought to product launches. Every decision was scrutinized, every choice filtered through the lens of how it would appear on social media. What exactly are you suggesting? I asked, though I already knew. I'm suggesting that you ask some of your colleagues from the firm to stand up with you instead. Jonathan has great bone structure. Peter just got back from that cycling trip in France. He's very fit. Even Martin, despite being in his 40s, maintains himself well. She was talking about the partners and senior associates at the accounting firm where I'd recently made junior partner. Men I respected professionally but barely knew personally. Men who wouldn't notice if I disappeared tomorrow, who'd probably struggle to remember my wife's name at the holiday party. I'm not uninviting my friends for my own wedding. Vanessa's expression shifted, her eyes narrowing slightly. Then I will. Excuse me? You heard me. If you won't handle it, I'll do it myself. I'll call them, explain that we've had to make some adjustments to the wedding party due to budget constraints, and thank them for understanding. She said it so casually, as if she were describing how she'd cancel a hair appointment. I felt something cold settle in my chest. In that moment, looking at the woman I planned to spend my life with, I saw a stranger. Or perhaps I was finally seeing her clearly for the first time. Let me get this straight. You want me to choose between you and my closest friends based on their physical appearance? I want you to choose between having a wedding that reflects our status and future together, or clinging to relationships that frankly don't serve where we're going in life. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to that tone she used when she thought she was being reasonable. Derek, honey, you're a junior partner now. You're moving up in the world. These men, they're still working retail and construction jobs. They're nice, but they're not our people anymore. Our people. As if friendship had a class requirement. As if loyalty came with an income bracket. Tyler runs his own contracting business. He employs 12 people. A contracting business. She said it like he sold timeshares. Derek, my family expects a certain standard. Do you know who my father is inviting? A federal judge, 2 state senators, the CEO of the largest real estate development company in the state. What do you think they're going to think when they see your groomsmen? I think they're going to think I'm a man who values loyalty over appearances. Vanessa's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, typed a quick response, then looked back at me with an expression that might have been pity. You're being emotional. Sleep on it. But Derek, I need an answer by Friday. Either you make the change, or I make it for you. This toxic relationship you have with refusing to see reality needs to end. She stood, gathering her designer handbag and the wedding planning binder that had become a permanent fixture in her life. I have a dress fitting at 4. I'll see you at dinner tonight, and please, try to be on time for once. We're meeting my parents at that new French place, and you know how my father feels about punctuality. I watched her leave, her heels clicking against the cafe's hardwood floor with metronomic precision. She didn't look back. I sat there for a long time after she left, my coffee growing cold in front of me. Around me, the cafe buzzed with normal life. A young mother tried to prevent her toddler from upending a sugar dispenser. 2 college students debated the merits of their philosophy professor. An elderly couple shared a slice of cake, finishing each other's sentences with the ease of 50 years together. together. My phone sat on the table between my hands. I picked it up, scrolling through my contacts until I found the group chat labeled The Idiots. It was a thread with Marcus, Tyler, and Chris that had been active since we'd first gotten phones in high school. Thousands of messages chronicling years of friendship, inside jokes that no one else would understand, support through breakups and job losses and family crises. The last message was from Chris, sent 2 hours ago. T-minus 18 days until Hanson gets hitched. Bachelor party planning meeting tonight at Riley's. Don't be late, groom boy. I typed out a response, then deleted it. Typed again. Deleted again. What was I supposed to say? Hey guys, quick question. Would you mind terribly if I uninvited you from my wedding because my fiancé thinks you're too ugly to photograph well? I locked my phone and stared out the window at the street beyond. A young couple walked past, hands intertwined, laughing at something only they found funny. They looked happy in that uncomplicated way that Vanessa and I used to be back when we first started dating. Back before every interaction became a negotiation, every decision a strategic calculation. When had things changed? I tried to pinpoint the exact moment, but it was like trying to identify when a sunset becomes night. There was no single instant, just a gradual darkening I hadn't noticed until I was sitting in complete darkness. My phone rang. Marcus, you coming to Riley's or what? Chris is already here eating all the wings. I could hear the bar noise in the background, the comfortable chaos of our regular spot. Yeah, I'll be there in 20. Everything okay? You sound weird. Just wedding stress. I'll tell you about it when I get there. Vanessa being a bridezilla again? The casual way he said it, like it was an accepted fact, hit me harder than it should have. When had everyone started seeing what I'd been refusing to acknowledge? Something like that. At Riley's bar, our usual booth in the back was already occupied. Chris had indeed claimed the wings, while Tyler was in a heated debate with the bartender about the optimal temperature for draft beer. Marcus waved me over, his receding hairline catching the light from the Budweiser sign above our table. The condemned man arrives, Chris announced, raising his beer in salute. His crooked nose, broken in a high school football game saving me from a blindside tackle, was as familiar to me as my own face in the mirror. I slid into the booth and accepted the beer Tyler pushed across the table to me. So what's the crisis this week? Tyler asked. She change her mind about the flowers again? Because I swear, if I have to listen to another 40-minute discussion about the difference between ivory and cream-colored roses, I'm going to lose it. It's not about flowers, I said quietly. Something in my tone made all three of them stop and look at me properly. What happened? Marcus asked. I took a long drink of my beer, trying to find the right words. There weren't it. Vanessa wants me to replace you guys as groomsmen. The table went silent. Even the ambient noise of the bar seemed to fade for a moment. Replace us? Chris repeated. With who? People from my firm. Guys who look better in photos, apparently. She thinks you don't fit the aesthetic of the wedding. Tyler's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Marcus stared at his beer like it held answers. Chris let out a laugh that had no humor in it. Well, I always knew I was a handsome son of a bitch. Good to have confirmation from the bride-to-be. She said you have a crooked nose, I heard myself say, then immediately regretted it. Chris's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. The nose I got shoving Jimmy Patterson off you when he tried to cheap shot you in that playoff game? That crooked nose? She said Marcus has a beer gut and Tyler needs his teeth whitened. Jesus Christ, Tyler muttered. Marcus shook his head slowly. Derek, man, I'm going to say this because we've been friends for 15 years. That woman is standing up for yourself material, not wife material. I know how it sounds. Do you? Chris interrupted. Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like your fiancé just called your best friends ugly and demanded you cut them out of your wedding. That's not wedding stress, Derek. That's who she is. You don't understand the pressure she's under. Her family, the expectations. Her family has been treating you like hired help since day one, Tyler said. Remember her sister's engagement party? When her dad introduced you as the accountant Vanessa is seeing like you were some kind of temporary arrangement? I did remember. I tried to laugh it off, but Vanessa hadn't corrected it. She just smiled and changed the subject. Look, I'm not defending what she said. I'm just trying to figure out what to do here. What to do? Marcus leaned forward. You tell her no. You tell her that your friends matter more than her Instagram wedding aesthetic. That's what you do. And if she follows through on her threat to uninvite you herself, then you'll know exactly who you're marrying. Chris said quietly. Someone who thinks people are interchangeable props for her perfect life plan. We sat in silence for a long moment. The bartender brought over another round without being asked. Something he did when he sensed serious conversations happening in his establishment. What do you want to do? Tyler finally asked. Not what Vanessa wants. Not what we want. What do you want, Derek? I thought about the question. Really thought about it. When I pictured my wedding day, what did I see? Who did I see standing beside me? I want you guys there, I said. I want the people who've known me since I was nobody, who've supported me through everything. I want my actual brothers, not some corporate strangers who couldn't pick me out of a lineup. Then that's your answer, Marcus said simply. She'll be furious. Good. She should be furious at herself for putting you in this position. Chris raised his beer. Whatever you decide, we've got your back. If you want us there, we'll be there. If you decide we're too ugly for the photos, we'll understand and still buy you an expensive toaster you'll never use. We all laughed, but it was hollow. The damage had been done, not by Vanessa's words exactly, but by the clarity they brought. I couldn't unsee what I'd seen in that cafe. Couldn't unhear the casual cruelty in her voice when she talked about the people I loved most. I went home that night to the apartment Vanessa and I shared, a modern 2-bedroom in the nice part of town that cost significantly more than I was comfortable with. Vanessa was already there, fresh from dinner with her parents, scrolling through wedding photos on her laptop. You're late, she said without looking up. We waited 20 minutes before ordering. My father was not pleased. I forgot. That made her look up. You forgot dinner with my parents? I had some thinking to do. She closed her laptop, giving giving me her full attention. About what you said at the cafe, about my groomsmen. Her expression brightened. Oh good, I was hoping you'd come to your senses. I've already started thinking about how to word the message to them. We'll emphasize budget constraints, maybe offer to include them in the rehearsal dinner to soften the blow. I'm not uninviting them. She blinked. What? I'm not uninviting my friends from my wedding, Vanessa. They're my groomsmen, and that's final. Her face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Surprise, confusion, anger, then something colder. Calculation. Derek, we discussed this. I told you what I needed, and I'm telling you what I need. My friends, the people who've been there for me long before you came into my life. The people who'll be there long after. Long after? Her voice dropped to something dangerous. What's that supposed to mean? I should have stopped there. Should have walked back the implication, smoothed things over, found some compromise. But I was tired. Tired of ending. Tired of molding myself into someone I didn't recognize. Tired of this toxic relationship that demanded I choose between my past and my future. It means that the woman I fell in love with would never have asked me to choose. She would have welcomed my friends. She would have understood that loyalty means something. Vanessa stood up slowly, her hands trembling slightly, not with fear or sadness, but with rage barely contained. The woman you fell in love with was a fantasy, Derek. I'm a real person with real standards and real expectations for my life. If you can't meet them, then maybe we need to reconsider this entire arrangement. Maybe we do. The words were out before I could stop them, hanging in the air between us like smoke from a gunshot. You don't mean that, she said, but there was uncertainty in her voice now. I don't know what I mean anymore. I just know that I'm tired of feeling like I'm not enough. My job isn't prestigious enough. My car isn't expensive enough. My friends aren't attractive enough. When does it end, Vanessa? It ends when you start taking our future seriously instead of clinging to your towny friends and their mediocre lives. Get out. She stared at me. What? Get out of my apartment. Now. This is our apartment. Both our names are on the lease. My name is on the lease. You moved in 6 months ago. Your name is on exactly nothing. So I'm asking you nicely, for the first and last time, to pack a bag and leave. For a moment, I thought she might argue, but something in my expression must have convinced her I wasn't bluffing. She grabbed her laptop, her phone, and her designer purse, moving toward the bedroom. I'll get my things tomorrow, she said coldly. And Derek, this wedding is off. I'm not marrying someone who chooses his loser friends over me. Good, because I'm not marrying someone who thinks people are disposable based on how they photograph. She slammed the door so hard that a picture frame fell off the wall and shattered. I didn't move to clean it up. I just stood there, listening to her heels click down the hallway, listening to the elevator ding, listening to the sound of my 5-year plan falling apart. My phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. You'll regret this. You'll never find anyone like me again. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, that's what I'm counting on. Then I opened my contacts and started a new group text to Marcus, Tyler, and Chris. Guys, change of plans. I need your help with something. Within 15 minutes, all 3 of them were at my door. They'd left Riley's the moment they got my text, sensing something had shitted. Marcus carried a 6-pack. Tyler brought his toolkit for reasons I didn't understand, and Chris had somehow acquired a pizza on the way over. Okay, what happened? Marcus asked, setting the beer on my kitchen counter. I told them everything. The confrontation with Vanessa, the things she'd said, how I'd asked her to leave. They listened without interrupting, their expressions growing darker with each detail. So let me get this straight, Chris said when I finished. She called off the wedding because you wouldn't replace us? Technically, I called it off, but yes, that was the final straw. Tyler shook his head. Man, I'm sorry. I know you loved her. I loved who I thought she was. I'm not sure that person ever really existed. Marcus opened 4 beers, passing them around. So what's the plan? You said you needed help with something. I'd been thinking about this since Vanessa left. The wedding was scheduled for 18 days from now. The venue was booked, deposits had been paid, and 200 guests had already received their invitations. Vanessa's family had spared no expense, and my parents, though they couldn't match the Crawford fortune, had contributed what they could. The wedding is still happening, I said slowly. Just not the wedding everyone's expecting. Chris raised an eyebrow. You planning to marry someone else in the next 2.5 weeks? Because that's ambitious, even for you. No, but I am planning to host an event. A very specific kind of event that I think will send the right message about what died here today. Tyler was already nodding, a grin spreading across his face. Oh man, you're not. I absolutely am. Marcus looked between us. Am I missing something? He's going to turn it into a funeral, Tyler said. A funeral for the relationship. Exactly. We're going to send out new invitations. We're going to use the venue. We're going to have all the guests show up expecting a wedding and instead give them something they'll never forget. The 3 of them stared at me. Then Chris started laughing. A genuine belly laugh that was infectious. That's the most beautiful, petty, perfect thing I've ever heard. I'm in. What do you need? We spent the next 3 hours planning. Tyler, whose contracting business included a graphic design department, volunteered to create the new invitations. Marcus, who worked in event planning, knew exactly how to repurpose the wedding venue for our needs. Chris, a high school English teacher with a dark sense of humor, offered to write the program. We need to be careful, I warned them. This can't come across as cruel or vindictive. It needs to be honest. A genuine memorial for what we thought we had, and a very public calling out of what she actually is, Tyler added. By midnight, we had a plan. The invitations would go out in the morning to the same guest list. They would be black with silver lettering, formal and somber. The wording would be carefully chosen to avoid legal issues while making the situation crystal clear. Tyler pulled up his laptop and showed us the draft design. You are invited to attend a memorial service for the relationship between Derek Hansen and Vanessa Crawford, which died unexpectedly on March 15th, after complications from irreconcilable differences. The service will be held at Riverside Manor, April 2nd at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, reception to follow follow in lieu of flowers. Donations may be made to the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Loyal Friends. That last line might be too much, Marcus said. No, I disagree. It's perfect. It says everything without saying too much. Chris was already drafting the program. We'll need a brief history of the relationship, key moments, and then a tasteful explanation of its demise. Think obituary meets wedding program. What about Vanessa? Tyler asked. She's going to lose her mind when she sees these. Let her. She ended this, not me. I'm just making sure everyone knows exactly why. The next morning, I called the venue. Mrs. Patricia Whitmore, the event coordinator, answered on the third ring. Derek, so lovely to hear from you. I hope you're calling with good news about the final head count. Actually, Mrs. Whitmore, I need to discuss a change to the event. There was a pause. A change? The wedding is in 17 days. The wedding is canceled. The event is not. I explained the situation professionally and calmly. To her credit, Mrs. Whitmore listened without judgment. I see. And you still wish to use the venue for this memorial service? Yes. Everything we've paid for we'll still use. The catering, the flowers, the music, just repurposed appropriately. Mr. Hansen, in my 30 years of coordinating events, I've never encountered a request quite like this. My heart sank. If it's too unusual, I think it's brilliant, she interrupted. Vanessa Crawford has been one of the most difficult brides I've ever worked with. The way she spoke to my staff, the impossible demands. And then last week, she made my assistant cry over the shade of white in the tablecloths. I would be delighted to help you with this memorial service. I could have hugged her through the phone. By that afternoon, 200 invitations had been printed. Tyler's team worked overtime to get them ready. We hand-delivered them to local guests and overnighted them to out-of-town invitees. The speed was intentional. I wanted to control the narrative before Vanessa could spin it. My phone started ringing within hours. First, my mother. Derek, honey, I just received the most peculiar invitation. I know, Mom. It's real. You called off the wedding? Vanessa and I agreed it wasn't going to work. There was a long pause. Then, good. What? That girl was never right for you, sweetheart. Your father and I have been worried for months, but we didn't want to interfere. When we got the invitation today, I've never been so proud of you for standing up for yourself. I felt something loosen in my chest. Really? Really? Your father wants to know if you need help with anything. Also, he's very impressed by the irreconcilable differences line. Says it's legally solid. Next came calls from my aunts, uncles, and cousins. The response was overwhelmingly supportive. Apparently, Vanessa's behavior at family gatherings hadn't gone unnoticed. Her condescension toward my relatives, her obvious discomfort at our middle-class celebrations, her constant checking of her phone during conversations, all of it had been cataloged and discussed in whispers I'd never heard. Then the other calls started. Friends of Vanessa's family, members of her social circle. These conversations were less pleasant. Derek, this is Margaret Crawford, Vanessa's mother. I don't know what you think you're accomplishing with this stunt, but it's in extremely poor taste. Mrs. Crawford, with respect, your daughter told me my best friends were too ugly to stand in our wedding. This is the consequence of her choice. Vanessa has standards. There's nothing wrong with wanting your wedding to reflect your social position. Then I'm sure you'll understand why I'm hosting a memorial service for a relationship that died when I realized those standards didn't include basic human decency. She hung up on me. 20 minutes later, my phone rang again. Vanessa, what the hell do you think you're doing? Hosting a memorial service. I thought the invitation was clear. You can't do this, Derek. You can't humiliate me like this in front of everyone we know. I'm not humiliating you. I'm being honest about what happened. You're making me look shallow and cruel. Vanessa, you told me to uninvite my closest friends because of how they look. You are shallow and cruel. Her voice shifted to something I recognized from our relationship. The tone she used when she was trying to manipulate me. Derek, honey, I was stressed. Wedding planning is overwhelming. Can't we just talk about this? I'm sure we can work something out. There's nothing to work out. You showed me exactly who you are. I'm choosing to believe you. If you go through with this, I'll sue you for emotional distress. My father knows lawyers. Good lawyers. Sue me. But that invitation is going to every single person who was supposed to attend our wedding. They deserve to know why there isn't one. You're going to regret this. I already told you that's what I'm counting on. I'm counting on never finding anyone like you again. The line went dead. Over the next week, the story spread. Social media lit up with speculation. I refused to comment publicly, but the invitations spoke for themselves. Friends started sending me screenshots of Vanessa's Instagram. She'd deleted all photos of us together and posted a carefully worded statement about toxic relationships and knowing your worth. The comments section was brutal. People who'd received the memorial service invitation were sharing them online. Some thought it was the pettiest thing they'd ever seen. Others thought it was justified. A few thought it was absolutely hilarious. The local news even picked it up. Local man turns canceled wedding into funeral for failed relationship, read the headline. They'd somehow gotten hold of one of the invitations and featured it prominently in the article. My boss called me into his office. Derek, I need to know if this wedding drama is going to affect your work. No, sir. If anything, my focus has improved. He studied me for a long moment. Jonathan mentioned he was supposed to be your replacement groomsman. Said Vanessa approached him about it before you two broke up. She did what? She called him 2 days before your breakup. Told him you decided to make some changes to the wedding part, and would he be interested in standing up with you? Jonathan declined. Said he barely knew you, and it felt inappropriate. I felt a fresh wave of anger. She'd been making plans to replace my friends before even confirming I'd agree to it. She'd been that certain I would bend to her will. For what it's worth, my boss continued, I think this memorial service idea is either genius or insane. I haven't decided which, but I respect a man who stands by his principles. Just try to keep the drama out of the os. 6 days before the memorial service, Vanessa showed up at my apartment. I'd had the locks changed, but she was waiting in the hallway when I got home from work. We need to talk, she said. said. She looked different. No makeup. Her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual designer everything. There's nothing to talk about. Please. 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I let her into the apartment. She stood in the living room, looking around at the space we'd shared. I've had time to think, she began. About what I said, about the wedding, about everything. And I was wrong. I got caught up in the perfect wedding fantasy, and I lost sight of what actually mattered. You, us. It was a good speech, probably rehearsed, but I'd heard variations of it before, after previous fights. Previous instances of her disrespect that I'd let slide. Vanessa, even if I believed you'd changed, which I don't, the damage is done. I can't marry someone who thinks my friends are disposable because they're not photogenic enough. I never said disposable. You absolutely did. You said they didn't fit our aesthetic. You said they weren't our people anymore. You called my loyalty to them a toxic relationship. She sat down on the couch, tears forming in her eyes. Real tears, from what I could tell. My mother has been calling me daily. Her friends are asking questions. People are gossiping. This memorial service invitation, Derek, it's ruining my reputation. That's what you're worried about? Your reputation? I'm worried about us. I'm worried about what we're throwing away. We're not throwing anything away. You already threw it away when you gave me an ultimatum about my friends. I was wrong. How many times do I have to say it? I was wrong. I'm sorry, and I want to fix this. I looked at her, really looked at her, trying to see if there was any genuine remorse beneath the panic about her social standing. Why now, Vanessa? Why are you sorry now and not when I first told you no? She hesitated just a fraction too long before answering. I've had time to reflect. You've had time to realize that this is making you look bad. There's a difference. That's not fair. What's not fair is asking me to sacrifice the people who've been there for me through everything. What's not fair is treating human beings like interchangeable decorations. What's not fair is coming here now, 6 days before the memorial service, and expecting me to believe you've had some profound change of heart. She stood up, anger replacing the manufactured sadness. So that's it? You're really going through with this ridiculous spectacle? It's not ridiculous. It's honest. Something you apparently have trouble with. You know what? Fine. Have your little funeral. Make your point. But don't come crying to me when you realize what you gave up. I won't, because I'm finally clear on exactly what I gave up. Nothing of actual value. She left without another word. I watched from my window as she got into her Mercedes and sped away. My phone buzzed almost immediately. A text from Marcus. She just called me. Offered me $5,000 to talk you out of the memorial service. I called him back. Please tell me you're joking. Wish I was. Said it was for everyone's good and that I was your best friend, so I should want what's best for you. I told her what's best for you is never seeing her again. What did she say? She said I was too stupid to understand what I was costing you. Then I hung up on her. Tyler chimed in on the group chat. She tried to bribe me too. Apparently I'm going for $3,000 because I'm less important to you than Marcus. I'm kind of offended by the price difference. Chris added, no call here. Guess my crooked nose isn't worth bribing. But seriously, Derek, the woman is desperate. Good, I typed back. Maybe she'll finally understand what it feels like to be powerless. The days leading up to the memorial service passed in a blur of final preparations. Mrs. Whitmore proved to be an invaluable ally, helping me transform what would have been a wedding into something entirely different. The floral arrangements were changed from white and pink roses to deep purple and white lilies. The seating was arranged auditorium style rather than divided into bride's side and groom's side. The catering menu remained the same. Excellent food was appropriate for any gathering. The programs arrived 2 days before the event. Chris had outdone himself. The front featured a photo of Vanessa and me from happier times, with the dates of our relationship underneath like dates on a tombstone. Inside was a brief history of our relationship, written with the emotional restraint of an actual obituary. Derek and Vanessa met on September 12th, 2 years ago at a charity fundraiser. Their relationship was marked by early joy and mutual respect. Over time, differences in values and expectations created insurmountable challenges. The relationship ultimately succumbed to an inability to reconcile fundamental incompatibilities regarding loyalty, respect, and the treatment of loved ones. It is survived by Derek's enduring friendships and his commitment to standing up for yourself and those you care about. The back page listed the order of service, opening remarks, a brief eulogy for what we'd lost, testimonials from friends about the importance of loyalty, and finally, a commitment ceremony where I would formally pledge to never again compromise my values for someone else's approval. The night before the memorial service, the four of us gathered at Riley's bar one last time. Last chance to back out, Marcus said, though his grin made it clear he didn't think I would. Not a chance. Tomorrow, 200 people are going to witness the death of my toxic relationship with someone who thought love came with conditions. Tyler raised his glass to Derek for having the balls to do what most of us only fantasize about. To standing up for yourself, Chris added. To loyalty, Marcus finished. We clinked our beers together, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Whatever happened tomorrow, I was finally being true to myself and the people who mattered most. My phone buzzed one last time that night. Vanessa's father, Robert Crawford. Mr. Hansen, this is Robert Crawford. I'm calling to inform you that if you proceed with this event tomorrow, my family will pursue legal action against you for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Mr. Crawford, I've said nothing untrue. Your daughter demanded I replace my closest friends in our wedding because she found them physically unattractive. When I refused, she called off the engagement. Those are facts, not defamation. You're humiliating my daughter publicly. I'm being honest publicly. There's a difference. If the truth is humiliating, perhaps you should ask yourself why. He hung up. I forwarded the voicemail to my parents' lawyer friend, just in case, then turned off my phone. Tomorrow was going to be interesting. The morning of the memorial service dawned dawned clear and bright, unseasonably warm for early April. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, adjusting my black tie. Marcus, Tyler, and Chris were already at the venue, handling last-minute details. My role was simply to show up and face whatever consequences awaited. My mother called as I was getting ready. "How are you holding up, sweetheart?" "Surprisingly calm. I thought I'd be more nervous." "That's because you're doing the right thing. Your father and I will be there early to support you. And Derek, we're proud of you." Those words meant more than she could know. My parents had always been supportive, but they'd been notably quiet about Vanessa during our relationship. Now I understood why. They'd seen what I'd been too close to see. I arrived at Riverside Manor an hour before the service was scheduled to begin. The venue looked nothing like the wedding wonderland Vanessa had planned. Mrs. Whitmore had transformed it into something dignified and somber. Deep purple drapes framed the windows, white lilies adorned every table, and where a wedding arch would have stood, there was instead a simple podium. "Mr. Hanson," Mrs. Whitmore greeted me warmly. "Everything is prepared. The catering staff has been briefed. The programs are at each seat, and I've hired additional security as requested." Security? Given the circumstances, I thought it wise, just in case anyone decides to cause a disruption. I hadn't even considered that possibility, but I was grateful for her foresight. Guests began arriving at 2:30. I watched from a side room as they entered, their expressions ranging from curious to confused to openly amused. My Aunt Jennifer was one of the first, and I heard her cackle of laughter from across the venue when she picked up her program. "This is the best thing I've seen in years," she announced to no one in particular. My college roommate, David, arrived with his wife. "Man, this is either brilliant or completely insane." "Why not both?" his wife replied, clearly entertained. By 2:45, the venue was nearly full. I'd expected some people not to show, but it appeared that curiosity had won out over social discomfort. Even some of Vanessa's friends were there, probably to report back to her about the disaster they expected to witness. At 2:50, a commotion erupted at the entrance. Vanessa had arrived. She swept in wearing an elegant black dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, her mother and father flanking her like bodyguards. The venue went silent as everyone turned to watch. Mrs. Whitmore approached her immediately. "Miss Crawford, this is a private event. You weren't on the guest list. This was supposed to be my wedding," Vanessa said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I have every right to be here." "Actually, you don't." I stepped out from the side room, and the crowd parted like the Red Sea. "This is a memorial service for our relationship, which you ended. Your presence isn't appropriate." We stood facing each other across the venue, 200 pairs of eyes watching this confrontation. Vanessa's face was a mask of barely controlled rage. "You're really doing this? You're really going to humiliate me in front of everyone?" "I'm going to be honest in front of everyone. If that humiliates you, perhaps you should examine why the truth is so damaging." Her father stepped forward. "Now see here, Hanson, Mr. Crawford, you and your wife are welcome to stay. This service is about honesty and growth, and perhaps you'll learn something about the values you've instilled in your daughter. But Vanessa, you need to leave. You made your choice when you gave me an ultimatum. This is mine." For a long moment, I thought she might refuse, but the security guards Mrs. Whitmore had hired were standing nearby, and even Vanessa wasn't brazen enough to cause a physical scene. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "When you're alone and miserable, you'll remember what you threw away." "I'm counting on remembering. That's exactly why I'm doing this." She left, her heels clicking against the hardwood with the same precision they had that day at the cafe. Her parents followed, though Mrs. Crawford shot me a look of pure venom before disappearing through the doors. The venue erupted in applause. I held up my hands for silence. "Thank you all for coming. I know this is an unusual event, but then again, these are unusual circumstances. Please take your seats. We're about to begin." As everyone settled in, I took my place at the podium. Marcus, Tyler, and Chris stood behind me. My groomsmen, after all, just not for a wedding. "Good afternoon, everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Derek Hanson. You're all here today because 2 weeks ago, you received an invitation to my wedding. That wedding is not happening, and I felt you all deserved to know why." I paused, looking out at the assembled guests. I saw my parents in the front row, my mother dabbing at her eyes. I saw my colleagues from work, some looking uncomfortable but most appearing genuinely interested. I saw extended family, old friends, and even a few people I barely knew who'd apparently been on Vanessa's extensive guest list. 3 weeks ago, my fiancée told me that my 3 closest friends weren't attractive enough to stand up with me at our wedding. She said they didn't fit the aesthetic she wanted. When I refused to uninvite them, she threatened to do it herself. That conversation led to others, and those conversations revealed fundamental differences in our values that I can no longer ignore. Someone in the back called out, "Good for you," and several others murmured agreement. "I'm not here to villainize Vanessa. I'm here to acknowledge that sometimes we stay in toxic relationships because we're afraid of being alone, afraid of disappointing others, afraid of admitting we made a mistake. I was all of those things, but I'm more afraid of becoming someone I don't recognize, someone who values appearance over substance, status over loyalty, approval over authenticity." I gestured to Marcus, Tyler, and Chris. "These men have been my brothers for over 15 years. Marcus drove 4 hours through a snowstorm when my father died. Tyler lent me money when I was broke and never asked for it back. Chris literally took a hit for me in high school that broke his nose. The idea that I would replace them because they're not photogenic enough is absurd. It's cruel, and it's not who I am." Tyler gave me a thumbs up, his eyes suspiciously bright. "So, this isn't really a memorial service for a failed relationship. It's a celebration of the fact that I finally found the courage to stand up for myself and the people I love. It's a commitment to never again compromising my values for someone else's approval. And it's a thank you to all of you who've supported me through this." The applause was deafening. People stood, and I felt the weight I'd been carrying for months finally lift from my shoulders. Chris stepped forward with the programs. yours. If you'll all turn to page 3, you'll see the order of service. We're going to do something a little unconventional now. We're going to have testimonials, not about Vanessa and Derek's relationship, but about loyalty, friendship, and the importance of standing up for yourself. Over the next hour, person after person came to the podium to share their stories. My Aunt Jennifer talked about leaving an abusive marriage after 20 years because she finally realized she deserved better. My colleague Peter spoke about cutting ties with toxic family members who tried to control his life choices. Even Mrs. Whitmore shared a story about standing up to a verbally abusive boss early in her career. Each testimonial reinforced the same message. Sometimes love means saying no. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from someone who treats you as less than you are. During a break in the testimonials, my mother approached me. "Your father wants to speak," she said. "He's been working on something all week." My father, a quiet man who preferred letting his actions speak for him, took the podium nervously. "I'm not good at speeches," he began, "but I need to say something. Derek, when you first told us about Vanessa, we had concerns. She was different from our family, different values, different priorities. But we didn't say anything because you seemed happy, and we thought maybe we were being judgmental." He cleared his throat, visibly emotional. "But over the past 2 years, we watched you change. You stopped coming to family dinners as often. You made excuses to leave early when you did come. You seemed stressed, tired, like you were carrying a weight we couldn't help you with. And then we got your invitation to this memorial service, and your mother and I actually celebrated." There was scattered laughter from the crowd. "We celebrated because we knew you'd finally seen what we'd seen all along. That relationship wasn't making you better, it was making you smaller. And son, you were never meant to be small. I'm proud of you, not for calling off a wedding, but for choosing yourself." I couldn't speak. I just walked over and hugged him, something I hadn't done in years. The crowd applauded again, and several people were openly crying now. The testimonials continued. Some were serious, some were funny, but all carried the same weight of hard-won wisdom about the importance of self-respect and genuine relationships. Finally, Marcus, Tyler, and Chris approached the podium together. "We didn't prepare speeches," Marcus began, "because honestly, what is there to say? Derek chose us, over someone he loved, over a wedding that cost more than our cars combined, over the approval of people who mattered to his social standing. He chose friendship, he chose loyalty, and we're going to spend the rest of our lives making sure he knows that choice was worth it." Tyler nodded. "In a world that constantly tells us to compromise our values for success, to sacrifice our relationships for advancement, to be whoever someone else needs us to be, Derek did the opposite. That takes guts, real guts." Chris, always the wordsmith, finished. "Someone recently called me ugly, said my crooked nose wasn't good enough for her perfect wedding. But you know what? This nose represents every time I've put my friend's safety before my own. These extra pounds Marcus is carrying, they're from 3 a.m. pizza sessions talking Derek through his dad's death. Tyler's teeth that apparently need whitening. They smile every time one of us needs support. We wear our imperfections like badges of honor because they represent real life, real friendship, real love. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is always beautiful." There wasn't a dry eye in the venue. The final part of the service was something I'd planned carefully. I'd asked everyone to bring a small piece of paper and write down one toxic relationship pattern or belief they wanted to let go of. We'd set up a small fire pit outside the venue, properly permitted and supervised, of course, and we would burn them together. As the sun began to set, 200 people filed outside. One by one, they approached the fire and released their burdens. I'm letting go of the belief that I need to shrink myself to make others comfortable. I'm releasing the idea that loyalty means accepting disrespect. I'm done with relationships that require me to abandon my values. When it was my turn, I held up my piece of paper. I'm letting go of the fear that I'm not enough. I am enough, exactly as I am, with the friends I have and the values I hold. I dropped the paper into the fire and watched it burn. Around me, people were hugging, laughing, crying. What had started as a memorial service for a failed relationship had transformed into something else entirely. A collective commitment to authenticity and self-worth. As the reception began, yes, we still had the expensive catering Vanessa's family had paid for. People mingled with an energy I'd never seen at actual weddings. There was something liberating about the whole event. Something that gave everyone permission to be honest about their own struggles with toxic relationships and the courage it took to leave them. My phone, which I'd silenced during the service, showed dozens of missed calls and texts. Most were congratulatory. A few were from Vanessa's friends, telling me I was cruel and heartless. One was from Vanessa herself. "You just destroyed any chance of me showing my face in this town again. I hope you're happy." I replied simply, "I am. For the first time in months, I really am." Around me, the party continued. Marcus was demonstrating his infamous terrible dance moves to a group of my cousins. Tyler was in deep conversation with my father about a home renovation project. Chris was surrounded by a group of people, apparently telling the story of how he broke his nose, saving me from a tackle. This, I realized, was what standing up for yourself looked like. Not perfect, not without pain, but honest and real, and surrounded by people who loved you for who you actually were, not who they wanted you to be. Mrs. Whitmore found me as the evening was winding down. "Mr. Hansen, in 30 years of coordinating events, this has been the most unusual and possibly the most meaningful ceremony I've ever witnessed. Thank you for everything, for understanding, for supporting this, for transforming what could have been a disaster into something special. Can I share something with you?" She lowered her voice. "Vanessa was right about one thing. This event has absolutely destroyed her reputation, but not in the way she thinks. People aren't talking about how you humiliated her. They're talking about how she revealed her own character. Several of her friends who attended have been texting me, asking questions about their own relationships, wondering if they're accepting treatment they shouldn't. You started something something today that's bigger than your breakup. As I drove home that night, still in my black tie, I felt a profound sense of peace. The wedding drama was over, but something more important had begun. I discovered that standing up for yourself wasn't a single act. It was a practice. And every day, I would wake up and choose authenticity over approval, loyalty over appearance, substance over status. My phone rang one last time before I got home. An unknown number. Mr. Fiancée, this is Catherine Morrison from Channel 7 News. We'd love to have you on our morning show to discuss your memorial service. We've been getting calls all day from people who saw posts about it on social media. They're calling it a movement. The relationship funeral trend. Would you be interested in sharing your story? I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. No thank you. This wasn't about starting a trend or going viral. It was about being honest with the people in my life. That's all. But don't you think others could benefit from hearing about it? Others can benefit from examining their own relationships and deciding what they're willing to accept. They don't need my permission or my platform to do that. I hung up, turned off my phone, and walked into my apartment. It was quiet, empty of Vanessa's belongings, absent of the tension that had filled it for months. It was just mine now. Simple, peaceful, and finally honest. Tomorrow, I would call my boss and confirm I'd be at work on Monday. I'd have dinner with my parents to thank them for their support. I'd meet the guys at Riley's for wings and bad beer and good company. But tonight, I just sat in the silence, grateful for the courage to choose myself, grateful for friends who'd stood by me, grateful for a called-off wedding that had freed me to find something better than I'd almost settled for. Sometimes the best decision you can make is to let something die so something better can live. The week following the memorial service brought consequences I hadn't fully anticipated. Social media had exploded with photos and stories from attendees, and the hashtag relationship funeral was trending locally. News outlets were still calling, bloggers were writing think pieces, and apparently someone had even created a meme using one of the programs. But more importantly, things were changing in ways that actually mattered. On Monday morning, I walked into the office expecting awkward conversations and judgmental stares. Instead, Jonathan from the senior partner team stopped me in the hallway. "Hanson, got a minute?" My stomach dropped. This was it, the professional fallout I'd been dreading. We walked to his office, and he closed the door behind us. "I need to tell you something. When Vanessa called me 3 weeks ago asking if I'd replace one of your groomsmen, I thought it was odd, but didn't think much of it. After your memorial service, I realized I should have said something to you immediately. It's fine, really." "No, it's not fine. I let loyalty to perceived professional networking override doing the right thing, and I'm sorry for that." He paused, looking uncomfortable. "But there's something else. Vanessa called Martin and Peter too. She was building a whole new wedding party without your knowledge or consent. The audacity of it hit me fresh. She hadn't just suggested I replace my friends. She'd been actively recruiting their replacements before I'd even agreed. I wanted you to know," Jonathan continued, "because Martin mentioned it in our partners meeting, and everyone agreed that what she did was manipulative and wrong. Nobody here thinks less of you for that memorial service. If anything, our respect for you increased." As I left his office, I felt lighter. The professional consequences I'd feared weren't materializing. If anything, I'd gained unexpected credibility by standing up for myself so publicly. That afternoon, my mother called with news. "Derek, you need to hear this. Your cousin Emily just called off her engagement." "What?" "To Brandon. They've been together for 5 years. Apparently, after attending your memorial service, she started really examining her relationship. She realized Brandon had been controlling and dismissive for years, and she'd been accepting it because she was afraid to start over at 32. Your event gave her the courage to leave. Is she okay?" "She's devastated but relieved. She wants to thank you. Said watching you choose yourself over a toxic relationship made her realize she could too." Over the next few days, similar stories emerged. My cousin's best friend left a verbally abusive boyfriend. One of my colleagues finally set boundaries with his overbearing mother. Even Mrs. Whitmore shared that she'd confronted her sister about years of disrespect at family gatherings. The memorial service had become a catalyst for honesty that rippled far beyond my own situation. On Thursday evening, Marcus texted, "Emergency meeting at Riley's now." I arrived to find all 3 of them already in our booth, looking serious. "What's wrong?" Tyler slid his phone across the table. On the screen was a Facebook post from Vanessa, published an hour ago. "I've been silent about Derek Hanson's cruel and humiliating stunt last week, but I can't stay quiet any longer. What he portrayed as standing up for himself was actually emotional abuse. He manipulated the situation to make me look shallow when I was simply trying to have the wedding of my dreams. He turned our private relationship into a public spectacle to hurt me. I'm sharing this because I don't want other women to suffer what I did. Emotional abuse isn't always obvious. Sometimes it looks like someone playing the victim while they're actually the villain." I read it twice, feeling a familiar cold settle in my chest. The post already had over 200 comments, split between people supporting her and people calling out her manipulation. "She's trying to flip the narrative," Chris said. "Make herself the victim." "Let her," I said, surprising myself with how calm I felt. "Anyone who was at the memorial service knows the truth. Anyone who heard about it from people who were there knows the truth. She can spin it however she wants, but I'm not engaging." Marcus frowned. "You sure? Because some of those comments are brutal. She's got people saying you're a narcissist, that you emotionally manipulated her, that the whole memorial service was abuse. And she's got way more people saying she's rewriting history to save face," Tyler countered, scrolling through the comments. "Look at this one. I was there. He told the truth with dignity. You revealed your character with your actions." And this one, "Calling someone abusive for refusing to abandon their friends is peak manipulation. The truth will stand on its own," I said. "I'm not getting into a social media war with her. That's exactly what she wants, for me to engage so she can claim I'm harassing her." Chris nodded approvingly. Smart. The more she talks, the worse she looks. The more you say nothing, the more dignified you appear. But staying silent became harder as the week progressed. Vanessa posted daily, each post more dramatic than the last. She talked about trauma from the public humiliation. She shared posts about narcissistic abuse and tagged them with my experience. She even started a blog titled Surviving Emotional Manipulation, My Story. What bothered me most wasn't the false accusations. It was watching people believe them without question. Some of her sorority sisters rallied around her, posting their own supportive messages about standing with survivors of emotional abuse. A few lifestyle bloggers picked up the story, writing sympathetic pieces about her ordeal. My mother was livid. She's lying, and people are believing her. You need to defend yourself. Mom, anyone who matters knows the truth. Let it go. But even I was starting to wonder if my silence was wise when, 10 days after the memorial service, I received a certified letter. Inside was a cease and desist from the Crawford family attorney, demanding I stop defaming Vanessa through continued harassment and public humiliation. It threatened legal action if I made any further public statements about her or their family. I immediately called my parents' lawyer friend, Gerald Matthews. After reviewing the letter, he laughed. This is a scare tactic. You haven't defamed anyone. You told the truth about why you called off your wedding. That's not illegal, and it's not harassment. They have no case. Should I be worried? Only if you plan to keep talking about her publicly, which I assume you don't. I haven't said a word since the memorial service. Then ignore this. If they actually file suit, which I doubt they will, we'll respond. But Derek, document everything. Every post she makes, every false accusation, every claim of abuse. If this does go to court, we'll need evidence of her pattern of manipulation. I spent that evening screenshotting Vanessa's posts and the comments defending me. The pattern was clear. She was building a narrative where she was the victim and I was the abuser, carefully omitting the actual reasons for our breakup. The following Monday brought an unexpected development. I arrived at work to find an email from HR requesting a meeting. My stomach churned as I walked to Sandra Morrison's office. This was it. The professional consequences were finally arriving. Sandra was serious as I sat down. Derek, we received a formal complaint about you this morning. From who? Vanessa Crawford. She's claiming you created a hostile work environment by pressuring colleagues to attend your memorial service and painting her in a false light to professional contacts. That's absurd. I didn't pressure anyone. The invitation was just that, an invitation. I know. We've already spoken to Jonathan, Martin, and Peter. All three confirmed you never pressured them, that attendance was completely voluntary, and that Vanessa actually approached them first about replacing your groomsmen. We've documented their statements. Relief flooded through me. So, we're rejecting her complaint. But Derek, I need to be clear about something. This is escalating. Vanessa is trying to damage your reputation professionally. You might want to consider getting ahead of this. Getting ahead of it? How? Tell your side publicly. Right now, she's controlling the narrative on social media. People who don't know you are forming opinions based solely on what she's saying. I left Sandra's office feeling conflicted. Every instinct told me to stay silent, to let the truth speak for itself. But what if the truth got buried under her lies? What if potential employers Googled my name and found only her version of events? That evening, I sat at my laptop staring at a blank screen. Tyler, Marcus, and Chris were with me, having collectively decided I needed supervision during what they called my crisis point. Write it out, Chris suggested. Even if you don't post it, writing it might help. So I wrote. I wrote about the day Vanessa demanded I replace my groomsmen. I wrote about months of escalating disrespect, of feeling like I was never quite good enough, of slowly losing myself trying to meet impossible standards. I wrote about standing up for yourself and choosing loyalty over appearance. I wrote about the memorial service not as revenge, but as honesty, as closure, as a commitment to living authentically. When I finished, it was 3,000 words of raw truth. That's good, Marcus said, reading over my shoulder. Really good. Are you going to post it? I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I highlighted the entire thing and hit delete. No, because posting it means I'm still letting her dictate my actions. I'm still giving her power over my narrative. The people who matter know the truth. The people who believe her lies without question were never going to believe me anyway. But what about your reputation? Tyler pressed. My reputation is what the people who actually know me think of me. Everyone at work knows the truth. My family knows. My friends know. Random strangers on the internet, their opinions don't pay my bills or warm my bed or make my life meaningful. Chris smiled slowly. That's probably the wisest thing you've said through this whole ordeal. The next morning, I woke to 17 missed calls and twice as many text messages. Something had happened. I opened social media to find that someone had posted a video. The caption read, "The real story about Derek Hansen's memorial service," from someone who was actually there. The video was from my Aunt Jennifer, recorded in her characteristic no-nonsense style. "I've been watching this young woman trash my nephew online for 2 weeks, and I've stayed quiet because he asked us to, but I'm done being quiet. I was at that memorial service. I heard Derek's story firsthand, and I'm going to tell you exactly what Vanessa Crawford did and why she's lying now." For 10 minutes, my aunt methodically dismantled Vanessa's narrative. She shared direct quotes from Vanessa about my friends being too ugly for the wedding. She described Vanessa's behavior at family gatherings, how she'd made snide comments about our middle-class lifestyle, how she'd openly mocked my mother's home cooking. She talked about how Vanessa had approached Jonathan, Martin, and Peter to replace my groomsmen before even confirming I'd agreed to it. "This girl is not a victim," my aunt concluded. "She's a manipulator who got caught and is now trying to rewrite history. My nephew chose self-respect over a toxic relationship, and she's punishing him for it by claiming abuse. That's disgusting, and I won't stand by while she does it." The video had been up for 3 3 hours and already had over 10,000 views. The comments section was overwhelmingly supportive of me. Finally, someone telling the truth. I knew something was off about her version of events. Calling someone abusive or standing up for their friends is the real manipulation here. I called my aunt immediately. Jennifer, you didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. You're too noble to defend yourself, so someone had to. Besides, I've been wanting to tell that spoiled brat what I think of her for 2 years. This just gave me a good excuse. Within hours, other people from the memorial service started posting their own accounts. My cousin Emily shared her story about leaving her controlling fiancé after my event inspired her. Mrs. Whitmore posted a professional but devastating account of Vanessa's behavior during wedding planning, including screenshots of abusive texts Vanessa had sent her assistant. The narrative was shifting fast. By that afternoon, several of the lifestyle bloggers who'd written sympathetic pieces about Vanessa had posted retractions or updates. The local news that had briefly covered her abuse story ran a follow-up featuring interviews with memorial service attendees. Vanessa's response was to delete all her posts and make her social media accounts private. But the internet never forgets. Screenshots of her posts circulated, and people began comparing her claims to the accounts of people who'd actually been there. That evening, I received a Facebook message from someone I didn't know. Mr. Hansen, my name is Patricia Chen, and I'm a therapist who specializes in helping people leave toxic relationships. I attended your memorial service as a guest of your colleague Sarah. I want you to know that what you did was not just brave, it was therapeutic. You modeled healthy boundary setting in a way I've rarely seen. I've had 3 clients this week specifically mention your memorial service as inspiration for their own difficult decisions. Thank you for your honesty. I showed the message to the guys at Riley's that night. See, Chris said, you did the right thing, both by having the memorial service and by staying quiet while she tried to trash you. The truth came out anyway. Aunt Jennifer's video didn't hurt, I admitted. No, but you didn't ask her to make it. She did that because she loves you, and because what Vanessa was doing was wrong. That's not you defending yourself. That's the people who know you best refusing to let lies stand. Marcus raised his beer. To Aunt Jennifer, the hero we needed. We all drank to that. The next week brought an unexpected email. It was from Catherine Morrison at Channel 7 News, the reporter I'd declined to interview. Mr. Hansen, I wanted to update you on something. After Vanessa Crawford's public accusations and the subsequent response from memorial service attendees, we investigated the story more thoroughly. We've decided not to pursue further coverage, as it's become clear this is a private matter that has already been resolved in the court of public opinion. However, I wanted to thank you for your initial decision to decline our interview. Your instinct to keep this private and not sensationalize it showed character. I hope your life moves forward positively. It was a small vindication, but it mattered. The news cycle was moving on. Social media was finding new drama to focus on, and my life was returning to something resembling normal, or at least a new normal. Because standing up for yourself changes you in ways you don't fully understand until later. I walk differently now, spoke more honestly, set boundaries more firmly. The experience had taught me that authenticity was worth defending, even when it cost me something I thought I wanted. Friday night, as we gathered at Riley's for what had become our weekly tradition, Tyler brought unexpected news. So I got a call today from Vanessa's father. We all stopped. What did he want? He asked if we could meet. Said he wanted to apologize. In person. That's a trap, Chris said immediately. That's what I thought. But he sounded genuine. Said he and Mrs. Crawford had been doing some reflecting since Aunt Jennifer's video went viral. Are you going to meet him? Marcus asked. Tyler looked at me. That's up to Derek. He's asking to speak to all of us, but especially you. I thought about it. Part of me wanted nothing to do with the Crawford family ever again. But another part, the part that had just spent weeks learning about honesty and difficult conversations, was curious. Set it up, I said. Public place. All of us there. Let's hear what he has to say. The meeting was set for Tuesday afternoon at a neutral coffee shop downtown. Robert and Margaret Crawford arrived precisely on time, looking markedly different from the polished, imperious couple I'd known. Robert's suit was still expensive, but he wore it with less confidence. Margaret's makeup was lighter, her expression uncertain. Marcus, Tyler, Chris, and I sat together at a large corner table. We'd agreed beforehand I would do most of the talking, but they were there as witnesses and support. Robert approached first, extending his hand. I shook it after a moment's hesitation. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us, he said, his voice lacking its usual commanding tone. I know we don't deserve your time. Margaret sat down without meeting anyone's eyes. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, Robert spoke. Mr. Hansen, Derek, I owe you an apology. Several apologies, actually. For the way I treated you during your relationship with my daughter, for the legal threats after your memorial service, and most importantly, for raising a daughter who thought it was acceptable to treat people the way she treated you and your friends. I said nothing. Waiting. After your aunt's video went viral, Margaret added quietly, we started receiving calls from friends, family, people we respect. They weren't calling to offer support for Vanessa. They were calling to ask what kind of parents raised a child who would behave so cruelly. That must have been difficult, I said, keeping my voice neutral. It was humiliating, Robert admitted, but necessary. We've spent the last 2 weeks in some serious self-reflection. Margaret and I realized that we've enabled Vanessa's worst behaviors her entire life. We taught her that appearance matters more than character, that social status trumps genuine relationships, that people can be discarded if they don't serve your image. We gave her everything she wanted, Margaret continued, her voice breaking slightly, but we failed to teach her what actually matters. And now she's 29 years old, alone, and unemployable because her behavior has become public knowledge. Unemployable? Chris asked. Robert nodded grimly. The marketing firm she worked for let her go 3 days ago. Apparently, several clients requested she be removed from their accounts months after the memorial service story gained traction. Her reputation in the industry is destroyed. I felt a complicated mixture of emotions. Not satisfaction exactly, but perhaps a sense of natural consequences playing out. Why are you telling us this? I asked. Because you deserve to know that there have been consequences for her actions, Robert said, and because we want you to know that we don't blame you for any of it. You handled an impossible situation with dignity. Our daughter created her own disaster. Margaret pulled out her phone and showed us a screenshot. It was a message from Vanessa. I hope you're happy. Derek ruined my life and you're taking his side. I'll never forgive either of you. We responded by telling her that Derek didn't ruin her life. She did, through her own choices and cruelty, Margaret said. We told her that until she can take genuine responsibility for her actions and make meaningful changes, we won't be enabling her anymore. We've cut off her allowance. She's on her own. Tyler shifted in his seat. That seems harsh. It's necessary, Robert countered. We've spent 29 years creating a monster. It's time we stopped feeding it. The bluntness of his assessment was startling. These were parents who'd worshipped their daughter, who'd catered to her every whim. Seeing them acknowledge her flaws so starkly was almost uncomfortable. I appreciate you sharing this, I said carefully, but I'm not sure what you're hoping to accomplish with this meeting. We're not hoping to accomplish anything, Robert said. We're simply trying to right what wrongs we can. We've already made donations to several charities in your friends' names. He gestured to Marcus, Tyler, and Chris as a small acknowledgement of the disrespect they endured. And we wanted to tell you directly that you were right to end that relationship. You saved yourself from a lifetime of misery. Margaret reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. We also wanted to return this. Inside was a check made out to me for $75,000. That's the total amount our family contributed to wedding expenses, Robert explained. The venue deposits, the catering down payments, everything. We don't want you to bear any financial burden from this situation. I stared at the check, overwhelmed. I can't accept this. Yes, you can, Margaret said firmly. Consider it an apology for every time we made you feel less than, for every condescending comment, for every moment we treated you as temporary rather than family. Please. The amount would more than cover the deposits I'd lost, and even give me a cushion for the future, but accepting it felt complicated. Marcus leaned over and whispered, take it. You earned it dealing with them for 2 years. Despite the tension, I smiled slightly. Are you sure about this? Completely, Robert said. Use it however you see fit. Start a business, take a vacation, invest it. Just promise us one thing. What's that? Find someone who deserves you. Someone who values loyalty and character over appearances and status. And when you do, invite us to the wedding. We'd like a chance to witness what a healthy relationship actually looks like. The sincerity in his voice was undeniable. These weren't the same people who'd look down on me at family gatherings. Loss and public humiliation had humbled them in ways I wouldn't have thought possible. I'll consider it, I said, pocketing the check. Thank you for coming and for being honest. As they stood to leave, Margaret paused. Derek, one more thing. Vanessa doesn't know we're meeting with you. If she found out, she'd claim we betrayed her. We're prepared for that. We just wanted you to know that some of us learned from this situation, even if she hasn't. After they left, the four of us sat in silence for several minutes. That was unexpected, Tyler finally said. Think they mean it? Marcus asked. About cutting her off and changing? Time will tell, I said. But either way, it's not my problem anymore. They're right about one thing, though. I dodged a bullet. Chris raised his coffee cup. To dodging bullets and standing up for yourself, even when it costs you something you thought you wanted. We clinked our cups together, and I felt a sense of closure I hadn't even realized I needed. The Crawfords' apology didn't erase what Vanessa had done, but it acknowledged it, and sometimes acknowledgement is all you really need to move forward. That evening, I deposited the check and transferred a third of it to a new savings account. Another third went to paying off some lingering student loans. The final third I divided 3 ways, sending equal amounts to Marcus, Tyler, and Chris. Marcus called within minutes. What the hell, man? You've all bailed me out more times than I can count. Consider paying forward the loyalty you've shown me. We don't want your money, Derek. Too late. It's already sent. Use it for something that makes you happy. Or save it. I don't care. Just know that this whole experience taught me something important. The people who matter can't be bought, but they can be honored. This is me honoring you. There was a long pause. Then, you're an idiot, but thanks. Tyler texted. Just saw the transfer. You're crazy, but I love you, man. Chris called last. This is going directly into my daughter's college fund. And when she's old enough, I'm going to tell her about the time her Uncle Derek chose his friends over a fancy wedding and taught me what real loyalty looks like. I hung up, feeling lighter than I had in months. The memorial service had been cathartic, but this felt like true closure. I'd turned something painful into something meaningful, transformed loss into growth, and emerged with my values intact and my friendships stronger. 2 months later, life had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Work was going well. I'd been assigned to several high-profile accounts after my boss noted that my ability to handle difficult situations with grace was exactly what challenging clients needed. My social life had expanded. Attending the memorial service had reconnected me with people I'd lost touch with during my relationship with Vanessa, and I'd started dating again. Nothing serious yet, but I was meeting people without the desperate need to make it work that had characterized my relationship with Vanessa. I knew what I wanted now. Someone who valued substance over surface, who understood that loyalty wasn't negotiable, who would welcome my friends rather than try to replace them. One Friday evening, as we gathered at Riley's for our weekly tradition, Tyler made an announcement. I'm getting married. We all stopped mid-drink. You're what? Marcus sputtered. Getting married to Jenna. You know, the woman I've been dating for 6 months who you've all met multiple times? We know who Jenna is, Chris said. We just didn't know it was that serious. It is. She's amazing. And before you ask, yes, you're all groomsmen. And no, my fiancée is not going to demand I replace you because she actually actually likes you and values what you mean to me. We celebrated with shots, and as the evening wore on, Tyler pulled me aside. I need to tell you something. Jenna and I talked about having a traditional wedding, but after everything you went through, I realized something. I don't want a wedding that's about impressing people. I want one that's about celebrating with the people who matter. So we're keeping it small. 50 people. A backyard barbecue. Nothing fancy. Just honest and real. Tyler, you don't have to do that because of what happened with me. I'm not doing it because of you. I'm doing it because you taught me that weddings should reflect your values, not your social anxiety. And my values say that I'd rather have burgers with 50 people I love than champagne with 200 people I'm trying to impress. 6 weeks later, I stood beside Tyler as his best man, watching him marry Jenna in a backyard ceremony that was everything a wedding should be. Simple, joyful, and completely authentic. During his vows, Tyler said something that made me tear up. Jenna, I promise to always choose you, but I also promise to never ask you to choose between me and the people who made you who you are, because a love worth having doesn't require you to abandon yourself or anyone you love. The ceremony was followed by barbecue, terrible dancing, and the kind of laughter that only happens when everyone present genuinely wants to be there. As I watched Tyler and Jenna's first dance, Marcus came up beside me. You started something, you know. Emily called off her engagement. Now Tyler's having a wedding that actually reflects who he is. People are reassessing their relationships left and right. I just chose myself, I said. Everyone else made their own choices. Yeah, but sometimes people need to see someone else stand up for yourself before they find the courage to do it themselves. As the evening wound down and I prepared to leave, I noticed a woman I didn't recognize talking with Jenna. She had kind eyes and an easy smile, and when she laughed at something Jenna said, it was genuine and unguarded. Derek! Jenna called, waving me over. Come meet my college roommate Sarah. She just moved back to town. As I walked over, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Possibility. Not the anxious need to make someone like me that had characterized my relationship with Vanessa, but simple curiosity about getting to know another person. Hi, I said, extending my hand. I'm Derek. Sarah, she replied, shaking it firmly. Jenna's been telling me about you. You're the guy who turned his canceled wedding into a memorial service? I braced myself for judgment, but her expression was warm. That took guts, she continued. I spent 5 years in a relationship that slowly eroded my sense of self. I wish I'd had your courage to make a clean break instead of just slowly fading out. It wasn't courage, I admitted. It was survival. Same thing sometimes. We talked for hours about relationships and growth, about the difference between being alone and being lonely, about the courage it takes to choose yourself when everyone expects you to choose comfort. She was funny and self-aware, with none of Vanessa's calculated charm. What you saw was what you got, and what I saw, I liked. When we exchanged numbers at the end of the night, it felt natural rather than strategic. No games, no pretense, just two people who might enjoy getting to know each other better. As I drove home that night, I thought about how far I'd come from that day at Café Lumière when Vanessa had demanded I replace my friends. I'd lost a relationship, but I'd gained something far more valuable, myself. The memorial service hadn't been about revenge or making a point. It had been about drawing a line and saying, this is who I am, and I'm not compromising that for anyone. And in choosing myself, I'd somehow made room for something better to find me. 1 year after the memorial service, I found myself standing in the same venue, Riverside Manor. But this time, the circumstances were completely different. Sarah and I had been dating for 10 months. What started as casual coffee dates had deepened into something substantial and real. She'd met Marcus, Tyler, and Chris within the first month, and rather than seeing them as obstacles to overcome, she'd embraced them as part of who I was. They'd become her friends too, in that organic way that happens when people genuinely like each other, rather than tolerate each other out of obligation. Today, we were here for Marcus's wedding. He was marrying Diane, a woman he'd been dating for 8 months, who worked as a veterinarian and laughed at all his terrible jokes. The wedding was simple but elegant, and Mrs. Whitmore had been delighted to coordinate another event for our group. It's lovely to see you again under happier circumstances, Mr. Hanson, she said warmly when Sarah and I arrived. And might I say, this young lady is a significant improvement over your previous choice. Sarah laughed. I've heard the stories. The bar was pretty low. As guests filtered in, I noticed familiar faces from my own memorial service. My parents sat near the front, my mother already dabbing at her eyes even though the ceremony hadn't started. My Aunt Jennifer was holding court near the bar, probably telling anyone who'd listen about her viral video. Even some of my colleagues from work were there, having become genuine friends over the past year. What struck me most was the absence of the tension that had characterized gatherings during my relationship with Vanessa. No one was performing. No one was trying to impress anyone. People were just genuinely celebrating two people they cared about. Tyler, serving as Marcus's best man, found me before the ceremony. Can you believe we're here? Marcus, settling down? He found someone who appreciates him, I said simply. That's all anyone really wants. The ceremony was beautiful in its simplicity. Marcus's vows made everyone laugh and cry in equal measure. When he promised to always choose us over what other people think of us, I caught Sarah's eye and she squeezed my hand. At the reception, as we danced to a song I didn't recognize but Sarah loved, she said something that made me stop. I need to tell you something. My heart skipped. Okay, I met Vanessa last week. She came into my office. Sarah worked as a career counselor, helping people navigate job transitions and professional development. What did she want? Help finding a job. She didn't know I was your girlfriend until I told her. The look on her face. Sarah shook her head. Derek, she's not doing well. She's been unemployed for over a year, living with a friend because her parents won't support her anymore. She's burnt every professional bridge she had. How did you handle it? I told her I couldn't work with her due to a personal conflict of interest, but I referred her to a colleague. Then I told her something else. Sarah paused. I told her that the best thing that ever happened to you was when she gave you that ultimatum about your friends, that forcing you to choose was the greatest gift she could have given you, because it showed you exactly who she was before you married her. What did she say? She cried, said she regretted everything, that she'd had a lot of time to think about her behavior and recognized how toxic she'd been. She asked if you'd ever consider speaking with her. I thought about it for a long moment. And what did you tell her? I said that wasn't my call to make, but that you seemed pretty happy with your life as it was, and that maybe the best thing she could do was work on herself rather than trying to revisit the past. That was diplomatic. It was honest. Derek, I could see she was genuinely remorseful, but I also could see that her remorse came from consequences, not from actual understanding of why what she did was wrong. There's a difference. I pulled Sarah closer as we continued dancing. Thank you for telling me, and for handling it the way you did. Do you want to see her? If she reached out? No, not out of anger or spite, but because that chapter is closed. She's dealing with the consequences of her choices, and I hope she learns from them. But I don't owe her closure or forgiveness or even a conversation. I've moved on. Later that evening, during the toasts, Chris stood up with his characteristic humor. When Derek had his relationship memorial service a year ago, some people thought it was the craziest thing they'd ever seen. But you know what? It might have been the sanest response to an insane situation. Because that day, Derek drew a line. He said, "This is what I value, and I'm not compromising on it. And I think we've all learned something from that." He raised his glass. To Marcus and Diane, may your marriage be built on honesty, respect, and the understanding that the people who matter most should never be treated as optional. And to Derek, who reminded us all what it means to stand up for yourself. The crowd cheered, and I felt Sarah's hand in mine, steady and sure. As the evening progressed, I found myself talking with various people who'd been at my memorial service. The common theme in every conversation was change. Relationships reevaluated, boundaries set, toxic patterns broken. My cousin Emily was there with a new boyfriend who treated her with obvious respect and affection. Mrs. Whitmore mentioned that she coordinated 3 conscious uncoupling ceremonies since mine, calling them relationship funeral memorials at the client's requests. You started a movement, she said with a smile. People are choosing honesty over pretense. It's refreshing. Near midnight, as the reception was winding down, I stepped outside for some air. Tyler joined me a moment later. Hell of a year, huh? Hell of a year, I agreed. You know, I think about that day at the cafe a lot. When you told us what Vanessa said about us being too ugly for her wedding. I was angry, but I was also hurt. Made me wonder if maybe she was right. If maybe I should care more about appearances. Tyler, let me finish. Then I watched you stand up for us, and I realized something. The people worth having in your life are the ones who see past the surface. Jenna married me knowing I'll probably be bald by 40 and my teeth aren't perfect. Sarah's with you because of who you are, not what you look like or how much money you make. That's what matters. When did you get so wise? When my best friend turned a canceled wedding into a lesson about self-respect. You taught us all something, Derek. Not just by having that memorial service, but by refusing to compromise on what mattered. Chris joined us, followed quickly by Marcus, who temporarily escaped his bride for a moment with his groomsmen. Group photo. Marcus announced. Mrs. Whitmore's idea. She wants to document what she calls the groomsmen who changed how people think about weddings. We posed together, the 4 of us who'd been friends since high school, who'd weathered jobs and breakups and life changes, who'd stood by each other when it mattered most. The flash went off, capturing a moment that felt significant in ways I couldn't fully articulate. Later, as Sarah and I drove home, she asked the question I'd been avoiding. Do you ever regret it? The memorial service? The way everything played out? I thought about it carefully. I regret that it had to happen at all. I regret investing 2 years in a relationship with someone who didn't share my values. But the memorial service itself? No. It was the most honest thing I've ever done. It set a precedent for the rest of my life. I will not compromise on what matters. I will not shrink myself to fit someone else's vision. I will not abandon the people who've shown me loyalty, even if it costs you something, especially if it costs me something, because anything worth keeping will never require me to sacrifice who I am. Sarah pulled into her driveway and turned to face me. I need to tell you something else about why Vanessa coming into my office shook me. Okay. For a moment, when I saw her sitting there looking genuinely broken and remorseful, I felt sorry for her. I thought about suggesting you might be willing to hear her apology. And then I caught myself and realized she doesn't get to disrupt your peace just because she's finally facing consequences. You don't owe her anything, and I don't get to decide whether you engage with your past. You're right, I don't owe her anything. But Sarah, the fact that you thought about it, that you felt compassion for someone who hurt me, that's not a flaw. That's who you are. Just promise me one thing. What's that? If I ever start acting like Vanessa, if I ever try to change who you are, ask you to compromise your values, or treat the people you love as disposable, call me out immediately. Don't let me become that person. Same goes for you. We hold each other accountable. Deal? Deal. 6 months later, Sarah and I got engaged. It wasn't dramatic or public, just the 2 of us on a quiet beach at sunset, with a simple ring and a simple question. When I told Marcus, Tyler, and Chris, they were thrilled but unsurprised. Saw that coming a mile away, Marcus said. When are we getting fitted for tuxedos? Actually, I was thinking something more casual. Maybe suits we can actually wear again, and the wedding's going to be small. Just people who genuinely matter to us. No memorial service joke reception? Chris teased. No. But there will be a moment during the ceremony where Sarah and I thank everyone for being part of our journey. And we're going to explicitly acknowledge that real relationships are built on acceptance, not on making people into who we want them to be. Tyler nodded approvingly. Mrs. Whitmore Whitmore coordinating? Who else? She's calling it her favorite love story. The one that started with ending the wrong relationship. The wedding, when it happened 8 months later, was everything a celebration should be. 50 guests, most of whom I'd known for years. My parents walked me down the aisle, both of them, because my mother had insisted and my father had agreed it was only right. Marcus, Tyler, and Chris stood beside me, and not once did anyone suggest they didn't fit the aesthetic. Sarah's vows made me cry. She promised to always see me as I was, not as who she wanted me to be. She promised to welcome my friends as her own. She promised to build a life based on honesty, even when honesty was uncomfortable. My vows were simpler. Sarah, I promise to never make you choose between me and the people who love you. I promise to value substance over service, character over appearance, truth over comfort, and I promise to stand up for yourself, even when that means standing up to me. During the reception, Mrs. Whitmore pulled me aside. Mr. Hanson, I want you to know something. In my 32 years of coordinating events, I've seen hundreds of weddings, but this one and that memorial service a year and a half ago, those are the two most meaningful ceremonies I've ever witnessed, because they were both about the same thing, honoring what's real. Thank you for being part of both of them. Thank you for showing people that it's okay to choose yourself, to set boundaries, to refuse to settle for less than you deserve. The number of clients I've had who've specifically requested honest ceremonies since your memorial service has been remarkable. You changed something in people's understanding of what celebrations can be. As the evening wound down and Sarah and I prepared to leave for our honeymoon, I took one last look around. My parents were dancing together, something I'd rarely seen them do. Marcus was in deep conversation with Tyler about home renovation projects. Chris was teaching Sarah's niece how to do a terrible magic trick, and Sarah was beside me, solid and real, and choosing me every day the way I chose her. This, I realized, was what standing up for yourself ultimately led to. Not isolation or loneliness, but connection built on truth. Not compromise, but collaboration between equals who respected each other. Not performance, but authenticity. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I opened it. Congratulations on your wedding. I saw the announcement online. I'm genuinely happy for you. You deserve someone who sees your worth. I'm sorry I couldn't be that person. V. I showed it to Sarah. How do you feel about this? I feel like it's a message from someone who's learning, slowly, what it means to be genuinely sorry, and I feel like you don't need to respond. You've already moved forward. She was right. I deleted the message without responding. Not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. That chapter was closed, completely and finally. As we drove away from the reception, Sarah asked, "Any regrets about how we got here?" Not a single one. Every choice I made, having that memorial service, standing up for my friends, refusing to compromise, led me to you. And that's worth everything I lost along the way, which was nothing of actual value. Exactly. We drove into our future, two people who'd learned the hard way that the most important relationship you can have is the one with yourself. Everything else, if it's real, will honor that rather than diminish it. And if I've learned anything from turning my canceled wedding into a memorial service, it's this. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let something die so something better can live. Sometimes standing up for yourself costs you what you thought you wanted, only to give you what you actually needed. And sometimes the best relationships are the ones that never require you to shrink, compromise, or abandon the parts of yourself that matter most. 1 year later, Sarah and I were expecting our first child. Marcus and Diane announced they were pregnant a month after us, turning our weekly Riley's bar gatherings into excited discussions about parenting and cribs and sleepless nights to come. One evening, as the 6 of us sat in our usual booth, Tyler raised a serious topic. I need advice. My boss told me if I want to make a partner, I need to optimize my personal brand. He suggested I distance myself from friends who don't project the right image professionally. The table went silent. What did you tell him? I asked. I told him to find someone else for partner, because any organization that asks me to evaluate my friends based on their professional value isn't somewhere I want to build my career. And I updated my resume that afternoon. Already have 3 interviews lined up with companies that actually value work-life balance and authentic relationships. Chris raised his beer. Ladies and gentlemen, the lesson continues. Once you learn to stand up for yourself, you can't unlearn it. We drank to that truth, to friendship that withstood every test, to choices that honored what mattered most. My phone buzzed with a message from Mrs. Whitmore. Mr. Hanson, I hope this finds you well. I wanted to let you know that I've retired from event planning. My final ceremony was your wedding, the perfect bookend to the memorial service that started this journey. Thank you for teaching this old event coordinator that the most meaningful celebrations are the honest ones. Wishing you and Sarah all the joy you deserve. I showed the message to Sarah, who smiled. End of an era. Beginning of a new one, I corrected, placing my hand on her growing belly. That night, as we lay in bed, Sarah asked, "Do you think our daughter will understand when she's older and asks about our story and we tell her about the memorial service? I think she'll understand that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away from something that's hurting you. That love shouldn't require sacrifice of your values or your relationships. That standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's essential. And if she ever faces a situation like yours, then she'll know she has permission to choose herself, to honor loyalty over convenience, to refuse to shrink for anyone, because she'll have grown up watching us build a relationship on exactly those principles." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "You know what's funny? Vanessa probably still thinks she was right, that your friends weren't good enough for her perfect wedding. She probably sees herself as the victim of circumstance. Maybe, but that's not my concern anymore. She's living with the consequences of her choices, and I'm living with the blessings of mine. I chose loyalty over appearance, substance over status, authenticity over approval, and I got you. Gotta keep my best friends, Got to learn what it means to truly stand up for yourself. I'd make the same choice 1,000 times over. As I drifted off to sleep, I thought about that day at Café Lumière when Vanessa had demanded I replace my groomsmen. I thought about the memorial service, about the wedding drama that had consumed weeks of my life, about the journey from that moment of ultimatum to this moment of peace. And I realized something profound. The best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's building a life so authentic, so aligned with your values, so full of genuine connection that the people who tried to diminish you become irrelevant to your story. They become a footnote, a lesson learned, a catalyst for growth rather than a source of ongoing pain. Vanessa had given me an ultimatum: choose her or choose my friends. I'd chosen my friends, and in doing so, I'd chosen myself. And that choice had led to everything good in my life now. Sometimes the relationships we lose aren't losses at all, they're liberations. And sometimes a called-off wedding is the beginning of the life you were always meant to live.